Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Oh my gosh, it's almost here. My favorite time of the year. Did you know that the doors to Simply Real Life, the method, are almost about to open once again? This is our signature once a year live group program. It's 6 weeks that are designed to help you stop the all or nothing mentality with your health, rewire your brain and get out of your own way, learn how to read the signals of your own body better, and create more freedom and intuition within your body, your health, and in your daily life, all so that you can live a more effortlessly healthy life for good. We'll put all the details in the show notes below. So if you're feeling stuck or stagnant or just not feeling your best, and know that there has got to be more out there than just doing continual diets over and over again and going through the extremes of the all or nothing mentality that comes with it, go check this out. This is by far the most popular, most amazing, most transformative experience that we offer all year. And we only do it once. I'll be coaching in there live this year for all 6 weeks, and it's going to be amazing. I can't wait to see you all on the inside. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Okay, I just have to say, I am loving this so much. This is so much better than trying to answer questions, typing them out on Instagram. I just had this realization this week that I'm like, wow, this is going to be so awesome because we can actually talk about things and actually talk about the nuances behind them and actually get specific and way more tangible and give you examples of exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm hoping that you feel the same way and hoping that you guys are loving this so far. And again, this is something that I'm hoping to create together as a community. So if you have feedback, ideas, questions on anything, if you want other things included, like a little weekly update or, whatever, just let us know. Come find me at Simply Real Health on Instagram. You can send me a DM. You can also pop in every week. I'm trying to put the question boxes up too. If you have questions that you think would be great for the podcast and topics that you want to hear a little bit more depth, and a little bit more of the actual scoop, the actual details. So come and let me know. This is obviously very much a work in progress and something that I really want to just be like a casual conversation, like you would be just that we could be like sitting and hanging out or going out somewhere and just like getting this good quality time, but also just good quality conversations and things hopefully that get your brain turning and thinking and maybe feel challenged sometimes or, help you sort through how you feel about certain topics or certain issues or where you stand and what's feeling good for you. That is truly the purpose of this. It is not that you have to agree. It's not that your life is going to look exactly the same as mine, but it's my hopes in sharing just some actual examples and talking through some of these things that have helped me that maybe just gives you a different idea or a different perspective or something that you could try, even if it's something tiny. I oftentimes find that it's like the tiniest little things that can make the biggest impact, especially when they're things that you do over time, that you're like consistent with, that you show up to often, that you make it a point and a priority to do. So that's really the intention behind this. So let's jump into today's question because it's a question that comes up a lot in a lot of different, it's phrased in a lot of different ways. I'll just say that. And the question is, how do you make time for yourself as a mom of 2? And there's different renditions of this question, like how do you make time for yourself as a mom of 2 while also maintaining some sort of sense of yourself? How do you do it as a mom of 2 and, somebody who cares about their relationship and their marriage? how do you make the time to do it when you're also running a business or you are doing work in the world that also requires such a different side of your brain, And this is something that I will say, first of all, that becoming a mother just adds a whole new element to the mix. And it's something that I knew going into it. So it was not like a surprise. But I think the surprise, maybe more so, does come from the fact where you just deeply want and desire to be in multiple places at one time. Like you want to do it all. And I think that's really the question behind the question, especially on this topic, is like doing it all, whatever your version of all is in your life, whatever parts of your life bring meaning and make you feel alive and reinvigorated. Like we all have multiple parts of ourselves. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And sometimes I think that when women become mothers, it can be such a huge part of ourselves and such a huge part of our identity that it can have a tendency to almost overtake everything else. But coming back, at least for me, to the reminder that it is one part, it's a giant part, of my daily life, of my identity, of myself, of where I'm pouring in my time and intention is absolutely in motherhood right now, which is something that I deeply wanted and deeply desired. It's also a good reminder to me that it's also not the only thing. And for me personally, if it was the only thing I was pouring my time and love into, it would get to the place where I would feel a little bit lost. And again, this is just a personal preference. This is just me knowing myself that I like to have a lot of different parts to my life going. And I don't know, maybe that's human design. Maybe that's, part of my astrology chart. Maybe, there could be a lot of different reasons, my upbringing. But I like to feel like I have different parts of myself that I'm like tapping in and tapping out of, like throughout the day, throughout different parts of the week, throughout the weekend. Like it's a continual, always constant sort of shifting of like, what mode am I in now? What am I paying attention to right now? What am I giving my all to right now? And it's almost just like this game of tag. And that process has taken me a long time to figure out my flow in. And every time I've had a baby, it gets sort of like paused or thrown off, as many of you know who are mothers, that there's this time where it is just focused on one thing, which is the new baby, and as they kind of start to grow older, you begin to remember these other parts of yourself that you have a different perspective. I do believe that every time you give birth to a baby, you are also giving birth to a new version of yourself. And it's kind of like a wait and see what comes up, wait and see how I feel, wait and see what things are calling to me, wait and see how, I'm feeling about work or friendships or in my relationship, just like, who am I now and what do I need? And I think just that constant question to ourselves is always a really good thing to keep in mind, that it's very normal to have to ask yourself and check in with yourself very often, because we are constantly changing and growing and becoming new versions of ourselves and taking what we learned from the past and carrying it with us into the future. So just knowing that process, I don't feel like I have it completely figured out, but I do feel like I am getting much better at learning how to, tap in and out of these different parts of me, of different parts of my identity and different parts of my life. So all of that being said, how I make time for myself as a mama of two, also someone who's running a business, also someone who's doing all these other things, which I know if you're listening to this now, you are probably very much the same, or it's something that you desire in your life. Here's what I can say. The first thing is that it is a priority to me to maintain my sense of self in also the other areas of my life. Sometimes in some stages that looks like very little amounts of the other places in my life, because my main focus is, maybe on being a mom, or maybe it's, having a newborn or some other stage in motherhood. But I will say that it is always a priority for me that I keep myself healthy and I keep myself grounded and I keep myself in a place where I do have these little moments to kind of check in with myself of like, what do I need more of today? What do I need a little bit less of today? And just, it's actually the process of like almost mothering yourself. Like as you are taking care of so many other things and so many other people and your household and just these different life tasks, that you're also holding that space for yourself. So many of you know that I'm such a big believer that the more you prioritize everything else in your life, the less you actually have to give to those things. No matter what the season is, always finding ways to prioritize myself, even if it's tiny, even if it's minutes, even if it's 1 hour a week, that I have some sort of grounding rod in me that's saying, okay, I also, because I want to do and give and love and serve to all these areas of my life, my community, my business, my work, my family, my marriage, my friendships, my neighborhood. There's so many parts of me that is just designed and wanting so deeply to love and serve. To enable me to do that, I also need to have a small bubble of time and space and practices that help me regain that moment with myself. So here's a few examples of what I mean. I think there's like a few different categories of things that I have started to do or make a practice in my life, and just saying that it's a priority. So I find for myself doing things like date nights, even though it is about our relationship, it is also about me feeling like I am a woman, like back as a woman talking to my husband and being in that role, in that identity of myself as, a partner to somebody else and a spouse. And I just feel it's like a different side of myself than being a mother. And so making sure that I have times and places carved out, I give it the time on the calendar, like I make and schedule things ahead of time to make sure it happens. Because if it's not on the calendar, there's no way that that's happening, things like that, where if you can think ahead of time for bigger picture stuff. I also will say when it comes to finding time for myself, the majority of how that happens is just within my normal daily routines. And this is something that obviously is very different for each person, but just I want to encourage you to start thinking about what are the things that I can do in my daily life that are maybe like a minute or less, 5 minutes or less, 10 minutes or less, that help me kind of get back to that place of quiet, of peace, where I can sort of hear myself talk or think, or that helps me use a different side of my brain or mode than I feel like I am usually in when I'm in the place or seat of being a mother or mothering or caretaking in any way. So thinking through your daily routine, this is why I'm doing things that are like my chlorophyll drops in the morning when I get up. I get up before my kids. And again, this is, at the time of this recording, I have an 18-month-old and a 4-year-old. And so it is one of those pockets of time where it works. And I feel like I can, if I get to bed on time, I have no problem getting up a little bit earlier, half an hour earlier, so I can go get my water, like put my chlorophyll in it. And I feel like that's one tiny way that I'm serving myself and giving back to myself, finding that time and that space. I'm carving it out. It doesn't just naturally happen. Like, of course, when my alarm goes off, of course I want to lay in bed. Of course I want to keep sleeping. Of course it feels more comfortable and better to just be like cozy in the blankets. But I know that if I can get myself to the place of like, no, you're doing this for you. You have to find the space for you, even if it doesn't naturally get given to you, And I think it's maybe that mentality that has really helped find this some sort of balance for me of being in that caretaking, giving, loving, serving role, but also making sure that I maybe do things that are slightly uncomfortable in the moment, but it's because I know that that time I'm giving myself will come back to serve me. So for example, right, I do chlorophyll, I do my water, I come in, I do like foam rolling in the morning to release all the tension, anything I'm carrying, even energetically from the day before. I'm very much an empath and a feeler. I hold things in my body. I feel things like that feel like they're happening to me, even when I hear like about things that are going on in my friends' lives or in my clients' lives. So I have to be really careful about releasing and have constant practices of releasing my nervous system, releasing the muscles in my body, releasing tension, releasing stuff I'm holding on to that is just not mine. So starting the day with foam rolling. I have to do my PT exercises because after June was born, I had like a herniated disc in my back that happened last summer. And it's been about 9 to 10 months to feel like I'm truly in a place where I am a little bit more recovered and can do workouts again and be, my active self that I like to be. So I do that 10 minutes every morning. Again, it's not that I love doing it or necessarily look forward to it, but I try to make it a moment to give to myself. So I listen to like meditation music or music that it feels like calming and relaxing, and it's before everybody else in the house is up. This is nothing crazy. I get up at 6:15 or 6:30 to do this. It's not like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., but like 6:30. And even those 10 minutes, if that's all I get done, if my kids come in, if something else is happening, if that's all I get done, I at least know, okay, I can check off, I got mental space, I hydrated, and I, listened to something that calmed my nervous system, released my muscles, and here we go. We kind of get like thrown into the day. On other days, more ideally, I would also take 20 minutes to do some kind of a workout, whether that's like a Pilates or yoga, something that's a little bit more gentle, depending where I'm at in my cycle, or to do like my Peloton bike, for 20 minutes. And again, it's nothing crazy. I'm very much like used to be so obsessed, as you know, with working out for like over an hour and had all these stories about how it didn't count if it wasn't a certain amount of time. But nowadays, I know it's just about the time that I'm giving to myself. Like it shifts my energy. When you move your body, you move your mind. You're able to like shift your mind and see what kind of like old stuck crap is maybe floating around in your brain, or stories you're telling yourself, or fears you have. And you can kind of release some of that. But without the proper like time and space to like sprinkled throughout your day, we just tend to hold. And then we're holding and carrying so much, including our kids, including things in our work, including things for other people. And so it's like a non-negotiable for me to have these little pockets of time carved out. And another thing is sprinkling things throughout your day in your normal daily routines that make you smile, that make you feel reinvigorated. I don't know what it is, like using my favorite mug when I'm making my morning matcha. It just like makes me feel comforted in it, and it's beautiful while I pour it. And just taking moments even amidst the chaos, right? Especially if you have younger kids and even for older kids. But like as a mom, there's always so much going on around you that it's almost like learning the art of just centering in yourself, even if it's for 5 seconds, and just looking around you and feeling even like so grateful for what's around you, feeling grateful for the mess, for the chaos, for the laughter, for even like the screaming, the fights. It's just, that's one of those things that's almost like an instant shift for me, even in the moments that feel tough and feel hard. And then another thing I have found really helpful is to just, let's say it's a day when I am with the kids all day, or a nanny calls in sick, or some, they're staying home from school, or something's happening where it's maybe a different sort of day, of like finding ways to incorporate my kids into things that also feel good for me. So like taking them out on a walk, like on the weekends, we try to do one family activity, just, Saturday or Sunday, an outing, an hour or two. And the things that help both Kyle and I are like a hike, like time in nature, maybe more so than a park. It's like the park, we're kind of standing there and like, we're watching them, they're having fun. So we do that too. But also trying to find ways that are like, what feels good to you? Is it taking the kids on the walk and then you get to move a little? Is it taking them to a fun new hike and you kind of both get to explore and or even if it's like taking them to a different sort of store or area of town to walk around in, or a different kind of coffee shop. Anytime you're experiencing something new or you're out in nature, those are two things that I always go to when I'm like, okay, we're all together today. Like, how can we make this the most fun and in a way that is really serving everybody, and everybody's going to be better off, like after this outing. Something I will also say here too, because it would not be a Simply Real Health podcast without talking about food, but one of the ways that I always do make the time for myself is I just always make sure that I have something that I can eat for lunch and eat for like my, whether it's late breakfast, early lunch, or a late lunch. And that's usually just making sure I have ingredients for a smoothie or I have some type of soup. And like, that's just a very small, tiny thing that when I do go to the store or order groceries or whatever is happening that week, that I make sure I have my like 4 basic things that I know I can use for a smoothie that's going to like fill me up, keep me nourished. It's going to be quick and easy to make. It's just like a non-negotiable, but it's also a way that I make sure that I make the time for myself instead of just working through, only focusing on work, then going right back into mama mode, and serving these kids all this food all the time, but like making that actual intentional space for me to eat a lunch every single day. So making sure I have the ingredients or that I'm making a soup in the Instant Pot or, something where it's like, it's done. The stuff's in the fridge. I don't have to think about it. And I know that if I'm fueled well, and it's not this conversation of like, oh, I don't know, what should I have today? Should I make a sandwich or what do we have? Or should I go out or what? It's like, no, you have the things, they're right there. There's no discussion. It will make you feel good. It will make your body feel good. Therefore, it's going to give you more energy. Therefore, you're going to have more patience. Therefore, you're going to be more kind of peaceful and centered and grounded if you know that you are fed and nourished well. Especially for me, I know the huge impacts it makes on my mood and my energy and my ability to give. So I make it a priority in my life to have those things around. And that's just such a small thing, but I feel like it's worth saying because I do know so many women who just don't stop and eat lunch. Like they just power through, but then they're just crazy hungry at like 4:00 and they're in the pantry and they're eating their kids' goldfish crackers and like just random stuff and a bag of chips before dinner. Then they're not hungry for dinner. And it's like all because they, were just too busy or not giving themselves the 5 minutes that it takes to like warm soup up, maybe less, now we don't have a microwave. So it takes about 4 or 5 minutes and or to make a smoothie. So that's also just something I feel like is worth mentioning. Another thing that I do and that like really helps me come back to myself, this may just be personally, but just listening to a podcast. For me, it's something I try to do a walk every single day, which is another thing, even if it's 10 minutes around the block, while it's nap time or something, and I can watch them on the monitor. Nobody come at me for that. But, you got to do what you got to do. So I feel like a walk, listening to a podcast just helps my mind always be learning and growing and curious. And it just gets me out of like the sort of daily grind of things in some way, although I try not to think of my day as a grind, but just more like it gets you out of your norms. It gets you thinking slightly differently. And it's kind of like just a relaxing thing for your brain. And whether that's an audiobook or a podcast or just some way that you are learning and remembering that you are like a full woman too, not just a mom. And, I think there is also a tendency to like want to listen to only parenting podcasts and all the books you read are parenting. And I think that's great. And it has its time and place, but I also find so much more vibrancy when it's about other topics and things that I'm interested in. Or maybe it's a lighthearted one if I feel like my brain just needs that. It's just, I feel like a way to make your life a little bit better in the day-to-day. Something I also do, I talked about the chlorophyll, but like also just making sure I fill up my water bottle. I have like 40-ounce huge water bottle. Somebody asked me on Instagram the other week, which one? It's like 40 ounces. It's a Yeti. There it is. You can probably hear it. And I just make sure I fill that up twice a day. That's just one tiny thing, again, in the norm of my daily routine that I make sure I'm hydrated. If I'm hydrated, I'm less hungry. It's everything. My digestion's better. My skin's better. Like I can do more. I feel more energized. So that's another thing that I do. Let's talk about things like at night, because I feel like there are these bigger pockets of time that I have found in the morning to carve out for myself, and then also at night. So nighttime can be tricky, right? Because you have gone all day and there's been so many things going on, and then there's dinner and maybe there's bath, and then you're putting your kids to bed, and then you finally have this moment to like breathe. I mean, first you probably have to clean up, So we try our best to like take turns doing that, alternate doing that, or do it together. So it's like just quicker. Also, another point I will say for like quick and easy dinners, the 10-minute dinners where it's like one pot to clean and, that's it. So having that time, that sacred time, that like 30 minutes after your kids go down is so important. And I know a lot of people, and I think in other stages of my life, even before kids, I would be like, oh, a glass of wine, maybe get right back to work. Everyone's situation is different, right? And I have periods of definitely like needing to work at night too, but I always try to now take at least 30 minutes to myself. Usually that is filled with a shower or a bath. If I feel like I need a little bit of extra, I'll go for the bath, Epsom salts, like put the essential oils in, just like make it a whole moment for myself. And I try to just sit there for at least 5 minutes by myself before I pick up my book or listen to something else while I'm in there. It is important to have moments, I think, in time where you're just yourself. You're not listening to music, a podcast, like all those things are great. Reading, all of those things are great and very normal, but also finding these little micro moments of like pause in your day where you can hear yourself think and actually check in with yourself. How am I doing? Like, how was today? What am I needing right now? I find something about the water, so bath or shower, to just be very cleansing. Like, call me a little woo-woo, but it's like, yes, physically cleansing, but it's also very energetically cleansing, and your body feels relaxed and you get a little extra magnesium, which helps you sleep. So all of those things I think are really helpful, like nightly rituals. I also am like pretty intense about screen time at night. Like I really want to be off my screens, or I'm wearing blue blocking glasses if we're watching a show or something and it's after 8:30. I've got my blue blockers on. And, not doing things like eating chocolate late at night, because that will definitely keep me up. I'm so sensitive to that. So, these little tiny things that I'm like, okay, then I get into bed and read. That also feels very fueling to me and also helps ensure that I get to bed on time. If I'm like staying up late watching a show, it is like all bets are off, right, for getting up in the morning. So knowing so much of this time for myself does come from like a little bit of the discipline to be like, I need to take care of myself. I need to go to bed now, like 10 o'clock, I should be in bed. And that looks different again for everybody, but having just those ways to know yourself best and know the impacts and to prioritize the things that do help you feel more awake, alive, alert, refreshed, nourished, being able to sprinkle those things into your day are huge, right? They're huge. I think so much of it can be about your mentality as you're doing stuff. You could have the mentality of like finding like peace and just checking in with yourself while you're loading or unloading the dishwasher. You could do it while you're doing dishes or folding laundry. Like it's all about the intention behind it. So you can make these like little moments that happen every day that seem maybe more mundane. You can start to think to yourself, like, how could I make this more enjoyable? Or something where I kind of do find a moment or spark of pleasure or fun or just lightheartedness, in that. I think that's also really important to think about, as well as carving out the time. I will also say too, like, this is not something that I am perfect at, especially when it comes to obviously I'm not perfect at it. No one's perfect at it. And there's so many factors outside of your control, especially as a mom. I will say that those daily things tend to come easier to me because my body is so sensitive. It needs so much to feel good, which is why I eat the way I eat, move the way I move, like have these practices because they're important. And because if I did not do them, I would be a completely different person that I don't really want to be, And so I think there's a lot to be said about that. I have a lot of growth to do personally in the areas of like planning bigger things, especially when it comes to time for myself. And I think this is something that definitely goes in phases as a mother, where you have phases where you're like, oh, okay, I'm not breastfeeding or nursing anymore. Like I could go do an overnight for myself. Like what if I did that once a year? What if I did that every, like twice a year or every quarter. I'm like, that would be cool. That's like a goal that I have. I'm like, what could I do that? How could I do that? Maybe it's going to stay at my parents' house, or if my friends are out of town, I could go sleep at their house. And, anytime where it's just like that alone time, and finding ways to, like, yes, in the daily, find those moments, but also how can I find some other longer chunks of time to do that? Like, I was so inspired. I just went on my first girls' weekend trip away from my kids for the first time, since my daughter was born. And it had been a while since I'd even left Noah. So there was like, I did this weekend, it was just, 3 nights, and it felt like so long, and it was so luxurious. And just to have time to journal and to, like, think about and plan about, what do I really want? Like, how am I feeling? What's going on? To work on some of the projects or things that I never really get to. And just to have time to, like, just only think about myself, for food, and not be feeding and cooking and doing all this other stuff, but just have it be easy to take a walk whenever I want it, like to basically do all the things that are so life-giving to me, but in like a compacted amount of time. And I know that that's not always, realistic, or something that can work, for a lot of different reasons. But it's things like that where I'm like, those are the things where if you get just like a little bit more time than what you're used to, it can just like take you levels up, right? And you come back and you're so refreshed and you're so excited, and you're just like, so I'm like, even one night away would feel like an eternity, of all of those hours. Like, imagine that, all of those hours pieced together, that you could have like a meal by yourself, that type of thing. So, again, there are ways to make that happen in your daily life, even if it's like going to eat a meal separately, or going out to dinner by yourself, or, again, like doing a swap with a friend, or finding a babysitter, or just, honestly, I feel like the hours compound so much when you're a mom. Like, even 2 to 3 hours away feels like so much luxurious time. It's so funny, but it does. Treating yourself as you are with any other important relationship in your life, where you're giving yourself some time and energy and love and attention and nourishment. Like, that is what we do for our kids. That is what we do for our partners. That is what we do for our work. That's what we do for our communities. And so also making sure that you are part of the same thing. Like, what is your relationship like to yourself? I mean, this would be something that would be so cool if we could all share, like, what are those tiny things and ways that you find time for yourself. I did forget one thing that I just will say on the workout thing that I don't know why this has like taken us so long to sort of get to, but a lot of it depends on your schedule with your spouse, partner. But, so what Kyle and I have started doing is saying, okay, let's split up this morning workout time. Like, I think he gets like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where like up until 7:15, like, I've got the kids. He can go do his workout, and whatever he chooses to do that day. If he chooses to sleep in, fine. If he chooses to do a workout, fine. But like, that's like his time, right? To go do what he wants to. And then on the other days, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning until 7:15, when our kids get up, like, then it is my time. So if I want to get up at 6:15, have an entire hour to myself, I can do that. If I want to do just 30 minutes, I could do that. But it also just reminded me of something else that's sort of on my like, ooh, that would be a good like goal or thing to try out, is to get a little bit better about not having FOMO when it's, a time where maybe my husband could take the kids to the park on a weekend morning, even just for an hour or two. I always get so much FOMO. I don't know if anyone can relate to this. Like, I just don't want to miss out on any family time because we both work, and the time that we have with the kids and all 4 of us together feels like it's so much more rare and special. But like, getting a little bit better, especially maybe for weeks or like specific seasons of work or something like that, where I'm like, I could use an hour, even if it's just to putz around, even just to like be in my own house and no one else here. But I really do struggle with that, like with missing out and wanting to always be all of us together for family time instead of there are some weeks and times where I could definitely probably use an hour to myself alone, and having that be like, okay. It's just an hour. Like we have all weekend or, we have time. So that's just something that maybe you guys can help hold me accountable and ask me how that's going, because that's something that I definitely want to work on. I hope that this is helpful to kind of hear some hopefully relatable and like things that you could easily start to incorporate or think about or think how it could apply in your life. But really starting to think like, what would that look like for you? Like both on like the daily routines, making them feel more joyful, making yourself feel more present with yourself, helping yourself take care of yourself in tiny ways. But then also like, what are some of those bigger ways? Like if we could dream a little bit, what would feel really good? And so I think even making a list of like, what are the things that make you feel alive? Like, what are those things that feel grounding, nourishing, just like really fill you up or make you excited or turn on a different part of your brain to like know exactly what to do instead of panicking. We've all done it. The panic of like, oh no, oh my gosh, what should I do? I should feel like I should be doing something, or it's if your kid's at school, or that panic of like, there's so many things to do. What should I do? So having maybe like a little list on your phone could be helpful, especially if you're starting to want to incorporate more of these moments into your life and carving more time and space for yourself in the midst of your daily life, even if you are a mother, even if you are, taking care of others. It's just so important to also make sure the priority is on yourself, because again, otherwise, the more you're prioritizing everything else, the less you actually have to give. Okay, that's it for today. I hope this was helpful and hopefully gives you some things to try and test and experiment in your own life. And I'd love to hear what you want to hear more about, the types of episodes you'd like to hear, the style of it, everything. We are open to your feedback. And if you're feeling up for it, leave us a little review. Being brand new, this is the only way that people will help find us. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.